The sky burned with red and gold as the sun dipped behind the jagged cliffs. Smoke still lingered in the air, a bitter reminder of fire and chaos. In the middle of a rocky canyon, a massive dragon lay motionless, his scales scorched, his wings bent at sharp angles. Every breath was heavy, filled with pain, and his eyes, once bright with fire, were now dull with exhaustion and bitterness. He tried to lift his head, but a sharp sting tore through his back. The memories came rushing back, humans with weapons, arrows and fire, chasing him from his home, from the forest he had protected for years. He had fought hard, but this time he was not strong enough. He had been broken. He looked around the canyon, the rocks jagged like broken teeth, the trees burned to black stumps. The silence was heavy, except for the occasional gust of wind whistling through the cliffs. His heart burned with anger. Humans had always been cruel. Every encounter had ended in pain and loss. He would never forget it. His trust in them was gone, buried beneath his scars and broken wings. He would stay here alone and wait for the pain to end. The wind carried a soft sound, small and cautious. He lifted his head slightly, nostrils flaring, sensing something. Another human? Another attacker? He prepared to defend himself, claws scraping the rocks, teeth bared. But then he saw her. A young girl, small and fragile compared to him, stepped carefully into the canyon. She carried a small pack on her back, and her eyes were wide, filled not with fear, but with curiosity and something else. Something soft, almost like hope. The dragon growled, a deep rumble that shook the stones around them. "Stay back," he warned with his eyes, with the low vibrations of his throat. The girl froze but did not run. She knelt on the ground, keeping a safe distance, and slowly opened her pack. A small bowl of water, some herbs, and a cloth were carefully placed on the rocks. She whispered to herself, words too soft for him to hear clearly, but her tone was gentle, like a breeze instead of a storm. The dragon tilted his head. Why was she not attacking? Why was she not running away in fear? He sniffed the air, tension in every muscle. His wings ached, and every movement was painful. Yet he wanted to lash out, to show her the price of getting too close. But something in her, the calmness, the patience, made him pause. She slowly reached into her pack and pulled out a small, glowing stone. It shimmered softly in her palm, reflecting the last rays of the sun. The dragon blinked, confused. Was this a weapon? A trap? He lowered his head slightly, trying to see what she was doing. She held the stone up and whispered again, softer this time, almost as if she were talking to him. He could not understand her words, but the tone, it carried no threat. Hours passed as the girl stayed there, never moving closer than he allowed. She drew circles in the dirt with a stick, placed her hands on the rocks, and occasionally whispered to him. The dragon watched, unsure. He was filled with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. His body ached, his wings felt like they would never lift him again, and yet, something in him wanted to see what she would do next. The sun set completely, and the canyon was bathed in deep shadows. Stars began to appear, tiny points of light in the dark sky. The dragon's breathing slowed, the muscles in his wings trembling with exhaustion. The girl had not left. She had not screamed or thrown anything. She had simply waited. She had not hurt him. And for the first time in a long while he felt something strange, confusion. Could a human really not hurt him? Could someone be kind? He tried to move again, testing his broken wings. Pain shot through him and he hissed, smoke curling from his nostrils. The girl flinched, but she did not run. She approached a little closer, her steps careful, gentle. She extended her hand, palm up, slowly. The dragon's first instinct was to lash out, to show her that kindness could be met with pain. But he did not. Something inside him, perhaps curiosity, perhaps hope, made him pause. The night grew colder and the wind picked up, howling through the canyon like a chorus of ghosts. The dragon lowered his massive head to the ground, resting his chin on the rocks. The girl crouched beside him, a few feet away, not touching him yet, but close enough that he could feel her presence. She began humming a soft tune, a human melody that carried warmth and comfort. The dragon's eyes flicked toward her. He had never known anything like this. Minutes stretched into hours. The girl finally reached out, a finger hovering near his shoulder. The dragon tensed, ready to strike, but the gentle hum and the warmth in her eyes held him in place. Slowly, hesitantly, he allowed her to touch him. Her hand was small but firm, and she pressed lightly against the scales of his wing. Pain flared sharply and he hissed, smoke rising from his nostrils. But she did not pull away. She whispered to him, though he could not understand her words, and continued to press, applying gentle pressure. Something shifted inside the dragon. He did not relax completely, he would never trust fully yet, but he did not push her away. He watched her carefully, noting her steady movements, her patience, her care. For the first time in years he felt something he had thought impossible. A flicker of trust, small but real. The night stretched on, and the stars shone like distant fires above. The canyon was quiet, except for the dragon's slow breathing and the girl's soft whispers. Somewhere deep inside, he wondered if perhaps not all humans were like the ones who had broken him, who had chased him from his home. Perhaps, just perhaps, some humans could be different. And for the first time in a long time, the dragon allowed himself to rest, not just in body but in mind. One cautious, fragile step toward hope had been taken, and the girl beside him had reached for the broken wings of a creature who thought he would never trust again. The first light of morning broke over the canyon, casting soft gold across the jagged rocks. The dragon stirred, muscles aching, wings trembling with pain. He had spent the night watching the stars and listening to the gentle whispers of the human girl, Leora, who had stayed beside him. She had not moved far from him, even as the wind howled and cold crept through the canyon. For a creature who had never trusted humans, this was strange, unbelievably strange. Leora had unpacked more of her small bag. She took out a soft cloth, dipping it into the water she had collected in the night. She approached the dragon slowly, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. The dragon tensed immediately, smoke hissing from his nostrils. He flexed his broken wings, testing the strength, or weakness, within them. Pain shot through his joints and he let out a low rumbling growl. "Please," Leora whispered, her voice steady despite the fear she surely felt. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." She knelt on the dusty ground, careful not to make sudden movements. Her eyes met his, and for the first time the dragon saw something that surprised him: patience. There was no fear, no malice, only determination. The dragon's mind raced. Why would she do this? Every human he had met had brought pain, fire, and arrows. They had never cared, never tried to understand. And yet, here she was, kneeling before him, her hand resting on the soft rocks, offering something unknown. He wanted to strike, to remind her that he was dangerous, that humans always hurt dragons. But his body was weak, his wings useless, and part of him, curious. Leora slowly moved closer, placing the wet cloth on the edge of a jagged scar along his shoulder. The dragon flinched, lifting his head and letting out a sharp hiss. "I won't hurt you," she said softly, pressing the cloth lightly against his scales. He could feel the cool moisture against the burnt edges of his skin. It stung, but it was not pain from fire, it was soothing, strange and unfamiliar. Hours passed as she worked. She cleaned the wounds, applied salves made from herbs she had gathered, and whispered quietly, telling stories he could not understand. Sometimes she hummed melodies, soft and low, that made the wind in the canyon sound gentle instead of harsh. The dragon watched her, watching the careful motions of her hands, the way she treated his broken wings with caution. He wanted to move, to lash out, but his curiosity held him back. He tried to remember why he hated humans so much. The pain they caused was fresh in his mind. Arrows tearing through his wings, fire scorching his forest home, screams that haunted his nights. And yet, with every careful touch of Leora's hands, every whisper and hum, a strange feeling crept into his chest. Could a human really be different? Could someone care without hurting? He flexed his wings slightly, testing the limits of movement. Pain tore through him and he hissed, curling his claws into the rocks. Leora flinched but did not retreat. She adjusted her position, speaking softly, keeping her voice low and calm. Her hand rested on the edge of his wing now, just above the broken bones. The dragon flinched again, smoke curling from his nostrils, but he did not strike. He watched her, studying the determination in her eyes, the careful rhythm of her movements. The morning stretched into midday. Leora never forced him, never tried to push too far. She let him dictate the pace, letting him flinch and pull back when needed. Slowly, hesitantly, the dragon began to relax. He still did not trust completely, but the fear that every human brought began to fade, replaced by curiosity. He wanted to know why she stayed, why she risked herself to help a creature like him. At one point, she brought out a small bowl of water and held it near him. "Drink," she said. Her voice was gentle, a command without force, a request that carried kindness instead of fear. The dragon lowered his head slowly, sniffing the water first, cautious. Then he drank, letting the cool liquid wash over his dry tongue. Leora smiled softly, her hand still resting lightly on his wing. The dragon felt something new, trust, tiny but real, taking root like a fragile seed. As the day went on, the dragon's pain remained, but Leora's presence became less threatening and more comforting. She moved with care, applied salves, adjusted bandages, and talked in her soft human voice. The dragon could not understand her words, yet the tone carried warmth and safety. Every small touch, every whisper, chipped away at the armor he had built around his heart. By evening, the dragon allowed her to touch more of his wings. Pain shot through him as she pressed along torn muscles and fractured bones, but he did not pull away. He could feel her determination, her desire to heal rather than harm. Something stirred inside him, a feeling he had thought impossible after years of pain and betrayal: hope. The sky turned deep blue, and stars began to appear overhead. The canyon grew quiet, only the soft hum of the wind and the dragon's slow breathing filling the air. Leora stayed beside him, never moving too close, never forcing him, only offering care and patience. The dragon lowered his head to the ground, letting her work, letting her presence soothe the ache in his body and the anger in his heart. For the first time in his life, the dragon realized that maybe not all humans were like the ones who had hurt him. Maybe some could be different. Maybe some could care. And for the first time in many years he did not feel the need to lash out, to burn, to strike. He let her touch him, let her help him, let her be near. The night deepened, the stars shining like tiny fires above the canyon. The dragon rested, exhausted but calmer than he had been in years. Leora stayed beside him, her hand lightly brushing his wing, her soft humming carrying him into a sleep he had almost forgotten. And in that quiet moment, with the canyon bathed in starlight and the first touch of human kindness on his broken wings, the dragon began to understand something incredible. Not all humans hurt, and some could be trusted, even him. The morning sun touched the canyon walls, spilling warm light over the jagged rocks. The dragon stirred, feeling the ache in his wings and muscles, but it was less sharp than the day before. Leora was already awake, kneeling nearby with her pack open. She had cleaned the wounds again, her hands gentle, her movements careful. The dragon watched her quietly, curious and cautious. He had allowed her to touch him yesterday, but he was still unsure if he could fully trust a human. Leora spoke softly, though the dragon could not understand her words. Her tone was calm, kind and steady. She applied a fresh salve to the torn edges of his wings, working slowly to avoid causing him pain. The dragon flinched once and she paused, letting him settle before continuing. Her patience puzzled him. In all his past encounters, humans had rushed in, eager to hurt, to dominate, or to chase him away. She was different. As the day passed, the dragon found himself watching her more than he watched the sky or the canyon walls. She moved with care, speaking softly, never forcing him. When he tried to flex his wings, testing the pain, she helped guide him gently. "No sudden moves," she murmured, her voice a soft rhythm in the quiet canyon. The dragon did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She wanted to help, not hurt. Leora offered him food, placing it near his claws. He sniffed warily. It smelled strange, but he was hungry. Slowly he nibbled, keeping one eye on her as he ate. She did not flinch or run when he ate with claws outstretched. She simply waited. The dragon realized he could relax slightly in her presence, and that small realization was heavy with meaning. Perhaps some humans could be trusted. Perhaps. Over the next few days, the dragon allowed Leora closer and closer. She brushed his scales carefully, massaging muscles tight from pain. She encouraged him to lift his wings, to stretch slowly, always near enough to comfort him if he stumbled. Sometimes, when the pain was too strong, he would flinch violently, smoke curling from his nostrils, and she would pause, waiting for him to breathe and calm before trying again. Her patience became a strange comfort. One afternoon, a storm rolled over the canyon. The wind howled, rattling the rocks and sending dust into the dragon's eyes. Lightning split the sky and thunder shook the ground. The dragon shivered, tense, ready to lash out at anything that moved. Leora clutched her pack and pressed herself against a rock, but she did not run. She called softly to him, her voice firm but gentle. For the first time the dragon did not strike. Instead, he lowered his head, feeling the human beside him not as a threat, but as a shield. She was protecting him, not from him but with him. He began to notice the small things she did, the way she adjusted the cloth under his wings to prevent rubbing, how she hummed quietly when the storm raged, how her hands moved with care over the broken scales. Each small act chipped away at his mistrust. Each gentle touch taught him that humans could be more than enemies. At night, when the canyon was quiet, he allowed her to sit closer, even to rest her hand lightly on his wings. The dragon's breathing slowed as he felt the warmth from her presence. He had spent years believing humans only brought pain. Now he felt something he had never known, a fragile, strange sense of safety. He still could not fully trust, but he wanted to. One morning Leora tried something new. She carefully tied small bands around the edges of his broken wings to support them, using soft strips of cloth. The dragon flinched, the pain sharp, but he did not pull away. He realized he trusted her enough to endure the discomfort for the sake of healing. His trust was not complete, but it was growing. The connection between them was fragile, like a thin thread stretched across a stormy canyon, but it was there. During these days the dragon began to watch Leora in a new way. He noticed the determination in her eyes, the way she refused to give up, the care in her hands. He wondered why she risked herself for him, why she stayed even when others might have fled. He had expected pain, betrayal, or fear. Instead, she brought patience, understanding, and courage. She did not demand loyalty or fear, she simply offered help. Slowly, the dragon allowed himself small gestures of trust. He let her brush his scales near his neck, a place he had always considered too dangerous to expose. He let her adjust the cloth under his wings, guiding the broken bones gently. He even allowed her to feed him by hand. Each act was a quiet victory, a moment where the past's fear did not dictate his choices. By the end of the week, the dragon could lift his head higher, flex his wings slightly without wincing, and even shift his body to accommodate her hands. He still could not fly, and he still carried scars from humans' cruelty, but the anger that had burned so fiercely in him was starting to fade, replaced by a cautious hope. Leora had become more than a stranger. She was a bridge to something he had never believed possible. A world where humans could care, where they could heal instead of harm. One evening, as the sun sank behind the canyon walls, Leora rested her hand on his shoulder and whispered softly. The dragon did not move. He stayed still, feeling her warmth and presence. The pain was still there, sharp and constant in his wings and muscles, but it did not dominate him as it had. He felt a strange comfort, a quiet sense that perhaps he was not alone in the world, and perhaps, just perhaps, humans could be more than enemies. The night fell, the stars appearing above like distant fires. The dragon lowered his head to rest on the cool rocks, Leora beside him, her hand gently brushing his wings. He was tired, sore and cautious, but he was beginning to trust. For the first time in years he did not expect pain from every human encounter. He had begun to believe that there could be kindness. And so, in the quiet canyon, under the gentle glow of the stars, a fragile bond was forming. Pain had brought them together, but trust was keeping them there. The dragon, who had thought humans only hurt him, was beginning to learn a new truth, that care, patience and courage could exist in those he had once feared. And as he rested, wings bent but slowly healing, he realized that he was not alone, and that perhaps he could begin to hope. The sun rose over the canyon, casting long shadows across jagged rocks. The dragon flexed his wings, testing the strength in the bones that had been broken for so long. Pain shot through him, but it was less than before. He had grown stronger in the days Leora had stayed beside him. Her hands had guided him, her whispers had soothed him, and slowly, he had begun to trust. Leora packed a small bag of supplies and stepped closer. "Today," she whispered, "we will see if the world is ready for you." The dragon tilted his head, unsure what she meant. His wings ached, and the memory of humans attacking him was still fresh, but her tone carried determination. She meant no harm, he could feel it. As they moved toward the canyon's edge, a group of humans appeared in the distance. Some carried weapons, others shields, and all wore expressions of fear and awe. The dragon's heart hammered in his chest. His first instinct was to roar, to strike, to burn. But Leora stepped in front of him, her hands raised. "They don't understand," she whispered to him, though the dragon could not understand the words. The tone carried reassurance. She was asking him to wait, to let her speak first, to judge humanity herself. The dragon's instincts screamed at him, but he had begun to trust her. Slowly he lowered his head, muscles tense, wings trembling. The humans froze when they saw him fully, his massive form outlined by the canyon walls. Some whispered in fear, others pointed. One raised a crossbow, and the dragon flared his wings, ready to strike. Leora's voice rose, firm and clear, calling to them. Slowly, hesitantly, the human with the crossbow lowered it. Leora spoke again, gesturing toward the dragon, moving carefully between him and the humans. She risked herself, standing close to him, showing that she trusted him and asking them to do the same. Suddenly, a mechanical hunter appeared from the canyon path, its metallic legs clanking against the rocks. It was designed to hunt dragons, its sensors glowing red. The humans panicked, shouting, stepping back. The dragon's eyes widened with recognition. Pain, fire, and fear, the memories of attack surged in him. He flexed his wings, ready to defend himself, ready to strike. Leora stayed close, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "We can fight together," she whispered. She did not run. She did not hide. She stood firm, trusting him to understand that she was not an enemy. The dragon's instincts were chaotic, but her presence calmed him, grounding him in a strange new feeling: cooperation. The mechanical hunter lunged, firing a pulse that struck the canyon floor. Rocks exploded, dust filled the air, and the humans scattered. The dragon leapt forward, muscles straining, wings spreading despite the pain. He struck the hunter with a massive swipe of his claw, and Leora ducked just in time. Sparks flew as metal clanged against scales. The dragon roared, sending a wave of wind that threw the hunter backward. Leora guided the humans to safety, shouting in her soft, clear voice, telling them to stay down. The dragon's trust in her became stronger in the chaos. He realized that she was not just a human who did not hurt him. She was a human who risked herself to save others, to protect, to guide. He felt a surge of loyalty, something he had never felt toward any human before. He lunged at the mechanical hunter again, tearing into it with precision and power, and the machine collapsed in sparks and smoke. The humans stared in awe, their fear mixing with wonder. When the dust settled, Leora approached him carefully, brushing dust from his scales. The dragon lowered his wings and chest to the ground, exhausted but alive. He looked at her, eyes full of a strange emotion he could not name. Relief? Gratitude? Perhaps both. She had proven something to him in the chaos, that humans could fight alongside dragons, not against them. That humans could be allies. The other humans slowly came closer, curiosity overcoming fear. Leora guided them gently, showing them how to approach the dragon safely. They extended hands, offered water, whispered words of respect. The dragon watched, muscles tense, but he did not strike. He allowed them to observe, to approach carefully, guided by Leora's calm voice. He realized that some humans could be different, some could be trusted, and he could see that Leora's courage had opened the door for that trust. That night, the canyon was quiet again. The dragon lay with his wings folded, still aching but healing, and Leora beside him. The humans who had watched from a distance now sat nearby, keeping their distance but offering quiet assistance. The dragon did not flinch when they moved around him. He had learned that humans could act with care, patience, and bravery, and that trust was possible, even after so much pain. Leora spoke softly, running her hand over his shoulder. The dragon leaned slightly into her touch, feeling the comfort and reassurance she offered. He had fought for survival all his life, but today he had learned something new. Humans could choose to protect rather than destroy. They could be allies in the fight against threats, not just sources of pain. The mechanical hunter lay destroyed, a reminder of danger, but also a proof of what could be achieved together. The dragon realized that his trust was not blind, but earned. Leora had proven herself, not through words or promises, but through courage and action. She had reached for him when others would have only attacked. She had shown him that not all humans were the same. As the stars appeared overhead, the dragon lifted his head and looked at Leora. Her small hand rested on his scales, her eyes calm and kind. He could feel a bond growing between them, fragile but real. He was still cautious, still wary of other humans, but he no longer saw them only as threats. Some could be brave, some could be kind, and Leora had shown him the way. The night was quiet, the canyon calm. The dragon's wings ached but moved slightly with each breath. Leora rested beside him, keeping a watchful eye on the humans who had come close. The dragon knew that the world outside the canyon could be dangerous, but he also knew that courage and trust could change that world. For the first time he considered that perhaps humans could be friends, allies, even protectors. And so, under the starlit sky, the dragon learned a lesson he had never imagined possible. Trust could be earned through action, bravery, and care. Pain could give way to hope. And humans, once only a source of suffering, could become something new, something worth believing in. The first light of dawn spilled over the canyon, painting the rocks in gold and orange. The dragon stretched his wings slowly, muscles still sore but stronger than they had been in days. He flexed them experimentally, feeling the wind lift them slightly. For the first time since he had been broken, he thought he might be able to fly again. Leora knelt beside him, her small hand brushing over the healed edges of his scales. She smiled, her eyes bright with pride and hope. The humans who had come to the canyon yesterday watched from a safe distance, still in awe of the dragon. Some whispered to each other, others simply stared, unsure what to do. The dragon's eyes swept over them, wary at first. But then he saw Leora standing between him and them, calm and unafraid. She had proven to him that humans could be trusted, that they could fight beside him, not against him. Slowly, he lowered his head and let his gaze rest on the humans. He would allow them to watch, to learn without fear. Leora stood and reached for his massive claw. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Her tone was gentle but filled with encouragement. The dragon flexed his wings again, muscles quivering, and gave a slow, deep rumble. It was the closest thing to a yes he could offer. She carefully climbed onto his back, her weight light but steady. The dragon shifted, testing the balance, and felt her confidence. She trusted him completely, and that trust gave him courage. With a powerful push of his wings, he lifted off the ground. The canyon floor dropped beneath him as the wind rushed past, lifting his body higher and higher. Pain shot through his muscles, but it was tempered by exhilaration. He had not flown in weeks, and now, with Leora on his back, he felt a new sense of freedom. The humans below gasped and cheered, but the dragon did not look down. He focused on the sky, on the wind, and on the small human who had reached for his broken wings when no one else would. They rose above the canyon, the dragon's wings strong, carrying them effortlessly through the early morning sky. Leora laughed, the sound carrying in the wind, and the dragon realized he had never heard a sound so full of joy. He had known pain, fear, and anger, but this was something new. Trust, companionship, and hope. He tilted his wings, and Leora leaned slightly to balance, her hand gripping a small ridge on his scales. Together they soared higher, past cliffs and burned forests, past rivers glinting in the sun. Below them the humans watched, some still in awe, some with fear, but all understanding something important. Dragons could be allies, not just threats. Leora's bravery had shown them that. Her willingness to reach for the dragon, to care for him, to risk herself in the canyon, had opened a door. Now the dragon and the humans could see that another world was possible. A world where trust and courage could bridge the gap between species. The dragon dipped low, skimming over a forest that had survived the fire, showing Leora the green shoots and life returning. He had protected this land for years, and now he could share it with someone who understood care and respect. Leora pointed to a distant river, then back at him, smiling. He huffed softly, a puff of smoke curling from his nostrils, and nudged her gently with his head. He was learning to communicate with her, through touch, through movements, through small sounds. She understood him, and he understood her. As the day progressed, they traveled further. Villages in the distance watched as the massive dragon passed overhead, a human riding on his back. Some villagers ran in fear, but others stood still, realizing that this dragon was not the enemy. Leora waved to them, her voice carrying as she spoke words of peace and encouragement. The dragon felt her bravery and her care, and he knew they could show the world a new way to coexist. Later they landed in a large clearing, surrounded by hills. The dragon folded his wings and lowered himself to the ground. Leora slid off his back and knelt beside him, brushing dust and debris from his scales. She whispered something to him, her voice soft but full of warmth. He lowered his head, allowing her touch, feeling a deep connection that went beyond trust. He had learned that humans could care, could protect, and could become friends. The humans who had followed them cautiously approached, their fear fading as they saw the dragon calm, listening to Leora, accepting her presence. One of them stepped forward, offering a hand. The dragon tilted his head, examining the gesture. Leora encouraged him with a gentle touch, and for the first time he allowed another human to approach. The hand hovered near his claw, and he sniffed, then slowly lowered his massive head to acknowledge it. A small, quiet moment, but one full of meaning. The sun began to set, casting orange and purple across the sky. The dragon stretched his wings fully, feeling the strength returning completely. He had been broken, battered, and mistrustful, but now he was healed in body and spirit. Leora climbed onto his back again, and together they lifted into the sky, silhouetted against the sunset. The humans below watched in awe, some cheering, some silent, but all changed by what they had seen. Flying through the evening sky, the dragon felt freedom and joy like he had never known. Pain was still a memory, but trust, hope, and companionship were now his companions. Leora's hand rested lightly on his scales, her eyes filled with pride and warmth. He had learned something important. Even after betrayal and pain, trust could grow. Even after fear, courage could shine. Humans were not all the same, and some could reach out, offering care instead of harm. As night fell, stars dotted the sky, and the dragon carried Leora over mountains and forests, showing her the world he had protected for years. Together they were not just a dragon and a human, they were a symbol. A symbol that bridges could be built, wounds could heal, and the future could hold peace between species. The dragon, once wounded and bitter, now soared with purpose, his wings strong, his heart open, and his trust in humanity renewed. And in that quiet, starlit sky, the dragon and the human girl flew together, free, unafraid, and ready to face a new era. A world where dragons and humans could coexist, protect, and thrive side by side. Hope had returned, carried on wings that had once been broken but now held the promise of a brighter future.